I'm Riley. Standing in the grand ballroom of the Arts Council Gala, I was surrounded by the fruits of my labor. The elegant invitations, the well-crafted programs, and the eye-catching signage all bore my mark, Riley Design. The applause was still ringing in my ears after my short speech, and I was on a high, feeling like I'd truly arrived. But then, I saw them. At the back of the ballroom, near the double doors, stood Evelyn in her Sunday best and Ethan in a wrinkled shirt. They were looking straight at me, and Evelyn's eyes scanned the room like a general surveying a battlefield. Her jaw tightened as she took in the success that surrounded me. This was not the image of me she had in her head. She had expected to find me struggling, living a meager life. Instead, here I was, in the center of a room full of people who knew and respected my work. Evelyn started walking towards me. Ethan reached for her arm, saying, "Mom, don't." But she pulled free and kept coming. I excused myself from the conversation I was having with a gallery owner. As she reached me near the cocktail bar, she said in a low, controlled voice, "You think you can just walk away from my family and become some kind of celebrity?" I kept my voice steady. "I didn't walk away from your family, Evelyn. I walked away from the way your family treated me." She retorted, "We treated you like family." I reminded her, "You told me at your own dinner table, in front of 20 people, that if I vanished, nobody would miss me." Her lips pressed together, and the air around us began to change. Her voice suddenly went up. It was a joke. Everybody laughed. "You couldn't take a joke, and now you've ruined my son's life." Heads turned, and the room fell silent. I looked her in the eye and said, "Your son is an adult. His life is his responsibility." She was on the verge of breaking down. "You left him. You broke up this family. Everything was fine before you decided you were too good for us." But I knew that it was never fine for me. Just then, the event director, Mr. Thompson, stepped in. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. This is a private event." Evelyn turned on him, but he remained calm. The room was completely still, and every eye was on us. I said softly, "Evelyn, you said a year ago at the cookout that if I vanished, nobody would miss me. Well, I vanished, and you drove 3 hours to find me and start screaming. Looks like somebody missed me after all." There was a moment of silence, and then someone started to clap. The applause spread through the ballroom, and Evelyn had nothing to say. After the incident, I stepped outside. Ethan was leaning against the car, and Evelyn sat in the passenger seat with her head down. He said, "I should have stopped her. From the beginning. Every cookout, every time she insulted you, I should have said something." I asked, "Why didn't you?" He dropped his hands and said, "I was scared of being the one she turned on next." I told him, "That's not an excuse." He nodded. "I know. Take care of yourself, Riley." As I watched the car drive away, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd come. It all started in a small town called Millfield. I grew up in Millfield, a town so small that it was easy to overlook. There was one main street with a diner, a small grocery store, and a church with a bell that rang every Sunday. My dad was a hard-working carpenter. He died in a work accident when I was 20. My mom, a kind-hearted schoolteacher, couldn't bear the loss and passed away from a broken heart a few years later. Left all alone, I was stuck in a small rented apartment, with only a second-hand laptop to my name. I taught myself graphic design using free online tutorials. I started making flyers for the local businesses, like the diner and the hardware store, and charged a meager $30 per job. One day at the town fair, I met Ethan. He was running a game booth for the local fire department. He had a warm smile and kind eyes. He brought me wildflowers from the fields near his house on our second date. I thought I'd finally found a family, a place to belong. We got married after a year, and I moved to his hometown, Riverdale, to be close to his family. Little did I know that I was walking into a world of humiliation. The annual family cookout at Evelyn's house had been a tradition for 18 years. It was held in her backyard, which had a chain-link fence and an old charcoal grill. Every year, around 20 to 25 people would come, including relatives, church friends, and neighbors. I did all the work for the cookout. I'd go to the butcher on Friday to pick up the meat, marinate it overnight, and then spend all Saturday morning baking the bread, making the salads, and setting up the tables. Evelyn would just sit in her lawn chair, greeting guests and taking all the credit for the delicious food. Once, a guest said, "Evelyn, this potato salad is amazing." She replied, "Oh, it's an old family recipe." It was actually my grandmother's recipe, one of the few things I had left from my mom. But I never corrected her, thinking it wasn't worth the fight. Ethan seemed oblivious to all this. He would say things like, "The website for the auto repair shop practically runs itself, even though I was the one who built and maintained it." He didn't even know the hosting password. Evelyn had a tough past. 25 years ago, her husband, Ethan's dad, was in a serious car accident and became paralyzed. With 2 young children, a mortgage, and only a high school diploma, she opened a home daycare. For 16 years, she took care of other people's kids to keep the family afloat. She was a strong woman, but she couldn't let go of the control. When I came into the picture, she saw me as a threat. The first Christmas I spent with the family, I made a homemade apple pie using my mom's recipe. Evelyn took one bite and then served a store-bought pie instead. When guests asked about the dessert, she just shrugged and said, "Riley tried." Ethan's sister, Lily, was 26 and lived in Evelyn's basement. She had dropped out of college and was working part-time at a gas station. She was jealous of my success and would often make snide remarks. Once, she accidentally spilled coffee on my laptop bag and just laughed it off. Evelyn just smirked, and no one apologized. Then there was Uncle Carl, Evelyn's older brother. He was 68 and retired from the local factory. The cookout was his only social event. He would often make demeaning comments, like, "You sure can set a table, girl. Shame that's all you're good for." Everyone would laugh, and he thought it was funny. I confronted Ethan about all these things several times. Each time, he would nod and say, "I'll talk to Mom," but he never did. One time, I told him I didn't want to go to the next cookout. He said, "Mom raised me alone after Dad's accident. She needs us around. Please, just for me." I always went, hoping things would change. But they never did. I started to realize that Ethan was not neutral. His silence was a form of agreement. He was comfortable living under Evelyn's rules because it meant peace. But I wasn't going to be a doormat forever. 3 months into our marriage, I opened a secret savings account and started putting $80 in it every week. By the time of the summer cookout, I had saved $12,500. I also started looking for apartments in a nearby city, Springdale. At the summer cookout, I worked hard as usual. I made all the food, set up the tables, and decorated the place. As we were sitting at the table, someone mentioned a family member's new baby. Evelyn leaned forward and said, "Family is everything. Blood is everything." Then she looked straight at me and said, "Honestly, Riley, if you vanished tomorrow, nobody would even miss you." The whole table burst into laughter. Ethan gave a weak laugh, Lily laughed loudly, and Uncle Carl had a big belly laugh. I looked down at my plate, which had a hot dog with mustard and relish. I took a slow bite and looked at Evelyn. "We'll see," I said. That night, as Ethan was asleep on the couch, I packed a suitcase with my clothes, laptop, important documents, and the framed photo of my mom. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter and drove away in the middle of the night. I stopped at a gas station on the way and blocked all the family numbers on my phone. I felt a sense of relief as I drove towards Springdale. I stayed in a motel for a few days. It smelled of stale cigarettes and cleaning products. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of what I had done. I cried, not because of Evelyn, but because I missed my mom. I knew she would have told me to leave a long time ago. After the crying stopped, I got to work. I used my savings to rent a small studio apartment above a print shop. The shop owner, Mrs. Jenkins, was a kind-hearted woman in her late 50s. She didn't ask me any questions, just offered me a cup of coffee and a warm welcome. I started reaching out to local businesses, offering them affordable branding packages. It was tough at first, but I slowly started to get clients. One day, I got a text from Sarah, a librarian from Riverdale who was the only person in town who was nice to me. She told me that Ethan had come to the library asking about me. He looked rough, unshaven, and tired. She also told me that the auto repair shop's website had gone down, and nobody knew how to fix it because I was the one who had set it up. And at the next cookout, Evelyn tried to do everything herself. The food was terrible, and only a few people showed up. As time went on, I got more and more clients. A boutique hotel hired me to rebrand their business. I worked hard on the project, coming up with different concepts and designs. The owner, Mr. Harris, was very impressed with my work and referred me to the Arts Council. That's how I ended up at the gala. After the confrontation with Evelyn and Ethan, I continued to build my business. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. I now live a happy life in Springdale. I have a small but successful design studio, and I've made friends with the local business owners. I still think about that sticky note Evelyn left in my mom's box, which said, "You never deserved these." But it no longer hurts. It just reminds me of why I left. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, I grill hot dogs on my balcony. My friends, Mrs. Jenkins and Mr. Harris, bring buns and sides. We eat and laugh, and nobody takes credit for someone else's work. I take a bite of my hot dog and look at the city skyline. I've come a long way from that table where I was invisible. The people who thought I was forgettable couldn't function without me. And sometimes, the quietest exit leaves the loudest echo.